Hello, today we'll be looking at what's in this lovely box from Eachine, but just before we get into that, a quick reminder to please like or dislike this video if you did like it, comment down below, please subscribe and click on that little bell icon if you can find it. It'll tell you when I'm uploading stuff. So, what's in the box? Here's a clue. It says Tyro series on there, and there's been enough Tyros for me to actually do a playlist. If you look over there, you'll see the various Tyros, and we've had the Tyro119, the 79, the 69 and the 129. Of all of those, I've really liked the little one and the big one the best. The 129 was a really nice quad, had GPS so you could set up rescue mode, 7-inch props, you could put quite a large battery on there and get quite a big flight time. Really enjoyed that. We'll still want to do some more stuff with that one. This is the 69, really benefited from upgrading these props to these little Avant 2 inches. That's quite a nice little toothpick style. The only thing I want to swap out is probably this camera and this VTX, something better, but the actual quad itself very good. Both of those went together pretty quickly. What we've got this time is the 119. Not a great change, and they're going to run out of 9 soon, I guess. What we've got here is something very similar to the Tyro 129, but slightly smaller. Where the 129 here had the 7-inch props, and I can't remember how big the actual frame is, this is a 6-inch model. And I'll just open up, see what we can see. As with all the Tyros, this is a kit for you to put together, so you will need to do some soldering, some putting together, and some looking and interpreting of the instructions, because they're not ever good enough for what they should be. But if you look in here, we've just got a bunch of bags. We've got some Dow prop TJ 6045s, and then we've got loads of bags full of stuff. Can't really show this here, so let's go into close up and we'll see what we got, and then we'll go through and put it together, build it, see what we get. Okay, the Tyro 119, which won't quite fit in the shot. Let's see what's inside. As we mentioned before, they've slightly gone a different way. They used to have sort of very moulded packaging with bits inside. Now they've just got a bunch of bags. So let me get this out of the way, and we'll take the bags one at a time. So as the only clear thing we could see, we've got these dowel props, which are called the TJ 6045. Not sure what TJ is for, as opposed to anything else. Then we've got this bag, which has this motor in it, and this motor is I didn't actually look at the motor specs, see what it is. It's got the normal sort of horrifically hard wires. I talk about this every time, and every time they don't improve. This is a 2407 1850 motor, slightly different to the 129, which used a 2507 1800 kV. So presumably we should find another 3 of those in the bag. Let's see if we can find those straight away. There's another one. These are coded on the top with a colour, which I generally get round the wrong way, but I haven't had props escape yet, so that's not so bad. 3, 4. Okay, there's the motors. Now, what I thought I'd do before I started on this is just have a quick check on the manual to see how it looks, because previously I've been unimpressed by the manual. Now, I don't know if it's because they got fed up with me making fun of their manuals, or it's just a bit early to have one, but right now they don't seem to have one. So I'm going to be building a little bit blind, which is possibly a little bit better than building with their instructions. Who can tell? Perhaps that'd be brilliant this time. But previously, yep, they've been pretty bad. So next up, we have this bag with some frame pieces in. Whoops. And it looks like we've got this. Oh yeah, pretty much the same as the 129. These nice thick legs, they look at least 5mm. These go on top of that and get sandwiched into this, and then that's the top plate for it. We've got these 2 things that act as the little camera mount, which will go on the front there. So yeah, frame's looking pretty similar. So we've got these metal risers and this TPU mount that goes on the back too, which holds the antenna. Fortunately, this is all the same as the 129. Got a whole bunch of hardware and screws here. The difficulty will be, I think, without any instructions, knowing exactly what screws for which, but we'll figure that out, and I might look back at the 129 instructions, see if that's got anything. Spanner, always have a spanner. Look, they've provided one for us. Battery strap, some cable ties, FPV antenna, which looks a little bit like the cover for the TBS Triumph, but obviously isn't one. This is a MMCX SMA adapter. Whole bunch of cables. There's not usually that much soldering to do, so we'll have to look at that. And then on the electronic side, we've got this ESC board. Doesn't have any writing on here, but I'll flash up the spec because it's bound to be somewhere on the product page. Next up, we've got the F.Port flight controller. Everything pretty much socketed, so it shouldn't take really any soldering. One of the things that always pops up as being the thing you do have to solder, which is annoyingly small, is this tiny little section here. Those little, focus on my hand, come on, those tiny 3 pins here. You need to solder 2 of them across for S-Bus or the other 2 across for I-Bus. And it's got an RX TX3, RX TX4 there, which might come in handy depending what else we're using. And oh, we've got everything accessible on the back here as solder pins as well, which is quite useful. And here is the VTX. It's the same one as last time, the XF5804. Now, one of the things it came with last time is just like a 3-pin cable here, so it was like power, ground and video. But many people pointed out, and I noticed it at the time, it's got this little pin called data, which apparently talks S-Bus, but they didn't have enough wires to actually hook that in. So I do intend to hook this up this time and get SmartAudio running on it, which is quite useful, especially when you want to bring the power down if you're waiting for the GPS to get positioned. So I haven't checked out what the cabling is there yet, but I'll sort that out when I come to it and do the actual soldering of the flight controller. Then we've got the GPS, which is the little Bentian BN220T. I've used this a bunch of times, it's very good. Last time they actually had branded this Eachine, they look like they've gone back to normal. Nicely wrap this up in a bit of heat shrink this time, and you've got a little sticker so you can stick that on somewhere, and that should be safe. And lastly, we've got the camera already installed in one of these little things that makes it easy to mount. This is the Caddx Micro F2, which is not a bad camera. It's not fantastic, but it's okay, it's perfectly reasonable. Little CMOS camera there. Often gets used in the sort of little micros. And here's our kit. Just looking at the frame pieces, one thing they seem to have got rid of finally is the sort of battery holdery thing, which wasn't really battery holder. It might just be that they forgot to put one in, or it might be that they've got fed up with that idea and have decided you should just strap the battery on directly. Saying that, there's no foam or anything to try and rest the battery nicely against here, because it essentially would be against this piece. So I'll sort that out when we get to it, I guess. With all these kits, the one thing, well, several things you don't get. The big thing being the receiver, so I'll have to add one in. I'm intending to add an R9mm OTA receiver here, just to see if I can fly this thing using F.Port, because it gives the single wire telemetry and should give me GPS position and stuff back to the radio, which I think is quite nifty. Obviously it doesn't come with a battery. This goes up to, I think the suggestion is 4 to 6S on this one. We'll have a look at what I've got around and see what's good to fly with. And obviously charges and stuff, because that's all with the battery and gubbins like that. Anyway, let's start putting this together and see what goes on. I'm not going to do a sort of full like hour watch me solder things from really dodgy angles, because I've done them before in the previous Tyros, which you can have a look at if you want to. What I intend to do is sort of come back with an update after I've done each little bit and say, here's what I've done so far and here's the next bit. So let's do that. And we'll be starting, of course, with, well, I say of course, doing the actual solder bits, which is going to be the motors onto the ESC board and the XT60, and then seeing how that goes onto the frame before we move on to the other bits. It shouldn't take long. It's you know, if you did it solidly without stopping and showing people on camera, it's just a couple of hours if you take your time and do everything carefully. Let's start. So I talked to the guy at Banggood and said, hey, there's no instructions yet for this one. Is that because it's too new, or are they not going to do any? And he said they're not going to do any. There weren't instructions for all the Tyros, he said, and I've only not had one of them, which is the 109, but there you go. which is a little bit weird because, you know, you got all these bits here. But at the same time, I've looked back at the Tyro119 instructions, and you could pretty much scrub out that 2 and replace it with a 1, and you'd have the same instructions. As I mentioned, the instructions there weren't perfect. It had one useful page about what screws that go where, but I've just laid it out here because you can kind of figure it out if you look at it. So you got the nylon bits here. Obviously the boards are going to go sit on that one, and then the next one and the next one, and you got the nylon nuts to do it up. We've got lots of these little 3mm, I think they're M3x8, so I've bundled them into groups of 4s because whenever you see big numbers like that, you like, those are motor screws. And then we've got some left, and that's probably going to be for these risers, so that's easily done. Then you've got, slightly confusing, you've got like a big screw and a smaller screw here. This is because what we've got on this one, and this was the same as the Tyro129, and annoyingly it wasn't even mentioned in the instructions. You've got these little, if it's going to focus, come on, you can do it. These little push nuts. You need to get these into these holes and pushed in all the way. Last time I used a hammer gently to get them in there, and you might have to do the same because they're quite tight. And this is the reason for having these longer nuts. So what happens, this is at the bottom, your leg sandwiches in between like so, and then you've got the shorter of these longer screws is going to go, goes like that, and then the longer of the screws will go now. This one will just get one of these normal lock nuts at the end of it. This one will screw through the push nut and then into the nylon to start holding the plate there. After that, it's all fairly plain sailing. That's just the only bits that aren't perhaps as obvious as they could be. But the first thing I need to do, aside from the soldering, is decide if the motors are going to come in and around the arms and sort of solder inside into the ESC board or on the outside. Last time the wires weren't quite long enough for that, so I had to go straight on. So I'm just going to, first thing I'm going to do is get these push pins in so I can just put a leg on, or perhaps all the legs, just see how it looks, put a motor on, and then see how much space I've got on those motor wires to decide if I'm soldering straight on or going around. So I'm going to do that next. Okay, that's the push nuts in. You'll see they're nice and flush there. One just pressed in, the other 3 needed a bit of gentle persuasion. So let's put a leg and a motor on to see what space we've got on the motor wires now. Okay, well that answered my question. You can see how I've just put the big screws in, and you can see that we then attach the risers to them. And I've just popped my ESC board on that, and you can see that as far as the wires go, certainly not going around this pillar. In fact, we've barely got enough space to actually be able to attach to these. Particularly short, some of these cables, for getting to this end one. You'll have to look at which cable is slightly longer than the other and try and figure out what's best to go to where. It's just, oh, I do hate these. They are so stiff. They need to be covered with a nice silicone wire to make it easier. The reason I do this is I want to do the soldering off the frame just to make life easy for myself. So I want to make sure before I start that I know which way I'm soldering. I'm soldering this way instead of trying to solder on that way, which now won't reach, so at least I know. Anyway, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tin all these up, tin this up, solder them together. We'll put this on properly. We'll find the XT60 connector. While I've got the iron out, I'll solder across the S-bus connector here. Although I'm not sure if I'm going to use that one for the receiver or not, but can't hurt. I might be using some of these ones. But yeah, let's get soldering. Okay, so this is the ESC board all soldered up, and I've actually gone from the underneath here just to make things a little bit neater, and where the motor wires are a bit short, it gives me a little bit more space than going over to the top of the board. Obviously we've got the XT60 on, and there's the underneath of the board where the soldering is not quite as neat as it is on this side. And you can just see how inflexible these wires are here. I really don't like them at all. Meantime, I've soldered the jumper here. That's an awfully fiddly job. I wish they wouldn't have it. And I've been connecting up bits to see what would have, what connected to where and how it was done. You can see this is for the ESC, obviously the camera. That's the VTX, GPS and receiver. I've already cut that off to sort my receiver out. So what I noticed on here is that we only had 3 wires. And we can see by looking at this, it obviously goes to the voltage, ground and video, nothing going to data. Back on this one, a little bit harder to see, but essentially these are the labels for this pin. So it's like, it says 10 volt, ground, no connection, VTX, which is our yellow wire, and then TX3. So we've got a possible connection here, but what we haven't got is a wire, and where we can solder onto this side, okay, from the underneath, but we haven't got anything to solder here, and it's a little bit awkward. If you've been doing FPV for a while, you may have a couple of cables that you can take out and basically rip the pins out of one and stick them in there. But if this is your first build, you're going to be a little bit screwed. In which case, I'm sure you can order wires and pins and things. Again, these are horrible stiff wires instead of nice silicon cables. So I'm going to see if I can find a similar cable to this that I've got. I've got, you know, old cables for boards and cameras and things. I might have to join one, but let's see if I can stuff something into the data side here and into the TX3, I think it was here. While I'm fiddling with that though, I can at least get this on the frame and get the frame built. It just helps get rid of some of the debris of parts we've got and stuff while we're building, so let's do that as well. This is the frame bit together, and just in case it wasn't clear, this is the front where the cutout is and the longer bit at the back. And now it seemed to be intended that the GPS sit underneath this and somehow magically get its signal through this hole and stuff. In my experience that doesn't work at all, and you need to mount it on top, but yeah, that's the front part. Well, I had a dig through my spares box and found this cable, so basically I just prized up the thing and took 2 ends of that, made it into this single cable, just a bit of heat shrink there to the 2 ends, and then all I need to do is literally slot this in, which I cannot do in a camera lens. Hang on a sec. And this should literally just push into place, it says, and be nice and tight there. And then I'm just going to wind it round a few times, which gives me this cable with this white being the data. So let's get that plugged in. As far as the quad goes, so we've got the board on, we've got the motors on. These hard motor wires are a pain, and it means that what should have been quite neat and tidy is just a bit messy. So I've used these cable ties from the box to secure those down, make them look a little bit tidier at least. I forgot to mention it at the time. If we look underneath, we've actually only got 3 screws for each of the motors, so we've got a whole bunch of spare screws left over. Anyway, the next thing to do here is put the flight controller on board, hook it up to the ESC board here, obviously get the camera in and get the VTX on top of that. So let's do that bit next. Okay, so here we are, we've got our stack in place. You can see the 3 layers there, and most of the connections are all happening. Got my receiver here, that's not bound yet. Got the GPS just flopping around there. Obviously got the camera just there, and I've put the antenna on ready here. It's a bit weird because what we're going to have is the MMCX coming to about here. So we've got this big cable, we're going to have to shove it around like that and try and squidge it in to get that going, but you know. Now I haven't put the top on yet because I want to connect it all up, make sure everything seems to be working as I want it to, just in case I have to get it all back out again and sort some stuff out. And that's one of the reasons the antenna's just here flopping about, that if I'm going to plug a battery in, I need to make sure that we've got a proper termination on this adapter, else the VTX could just burn itself out and die. So basically I'm now going to plug everything into Betaflight, make sure everything's working as it should do. I need to make sure of course that this is now configured for SmartAudio with that extra wire we've put in. Need to get the receiver bound, make sure we can talk to the flight controller, and obviously make sure the flight controller is talking to the ESC and the VTX and the camera, etc, etc. The other thing to point out, I noticed this from the 129, and it's the same thing. It's quite hard when you put the top on, there's some risers coming there and there. Getting this camera leg thing lined up is really, really difficult. As the camera screws in, these move around, and so it doesn't line up perfectly. It's probably a better idea to take the camera off, get the legs connected up, and then put the camera in after the top's back on. But we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right, so let's get on to beta flight now and see what's happening. Okay, we're in beta flight here, and I just wanted to show you how it looked before I did anything, and then I'll come back and show you what I changed. Quad's all in, it's moving around and stuff. So in the ports at the moment, we've obviously got the USB, then we've got the GPS on UART1, that's configured. UART2 has the serial RX, and I think we're going to have our SmartAudio on TX3, if I've remembered that correctly. We're running DShot 600, motor stop is not on, we'll have that on. 8K 2K loop, 180 degrees max arming angle. I'm actually going to run F.Port on this particular receiver for doing another video. Bunch of stuff here we don't need. We don't need soft serial. I don't like air mode. The rest is okay. I don't want RX lost. Power and battery, that looks pretty normal. Pit tuning, yeah, I expect to change the rates around. Oh, no. Someone's messed with the super rates. Look, it's on 1,000 already, apart from your, which is on 1263. Do a bit with that. The receiver, my receiver is plugged in but is not responding because we haven't set our F.Port yet. We've got the channel map on TAER, which is not what I use. Modes, they've just these ones set up. They've got GPS rescue mode ready. Oh, that's a good point. Back on configuration. Yep, you see we've got GPS all set there. And in fact, if we give the enable export mode, we have a look at GPS. We have got, well, we've got ASAT there. The quad is sat on my desk with the receiver upside down, so I wouldn't expect to see anything, but the fact we're getting this means that something's happening. OSD, ugh, don't like that too much. What have they got on there? GPS, SAT, speed, home direction, home distance. So not too much. Yeah, so I'm going to go fiddle about with it because I think there might be a couple of goes of doing it, and then I'll show you what I did. Okay, so I'm back into beta flight now and want to show you what I did, and there was quite a bit of fiddling around with various things, mainly to do with the type of connection I was using. So on the port screen, a couple of changes. GPS is still there. We've added TBS SmartAudio to UART3, and that works fine. You will notice that the receiver has moved from UART2 to UART4. This was using F.Port and some issues with that, which I'm not going to go into here because this isn't about F.Port, and I've got another video coming out about that. But there was a bit of fiddling around there. Configuration wise, we added motor stop, craft name got added. Not much else though. We've turned off soft serial because didn't need that. I turned off air mode because I wanted it on a switch, and I turned off RX loss because I didn't want that. Pit tuning, I've realised I've forgotten to sort out that pit tuning. All I wanted to do is just move that down and move this down. I'm trying out flying with a 0.2 RC Expo now as well. Let's save that. Oh yeah, and I forgot to point out there's my FreeSky F.Port there. Right, so receiver wise, we're all hooked up and happy. We've got RSSI on channel 16 there, or aux12. Midpoints are about right. We'll put a little RC deadband of 2 just in case. Modes, we stuck on arm angle, GPS rescue of course, beeper air mode and turtle mode just in case. And the OSD was the only other big change, where we've put a bunch of stuff around to give us lat long from the GPS, and we got GPS height and speed there, as well as distance from home, return to home arrow, and this is the amount of cumulative distance we've gone. Apart from that, everything's the same. So yeah, just about ready to fly it, but let's show you what it looks like before we do that. So just before we go out and maiden it, I thought I'd show you what the actual finished article looks like. I have, similar to the 129, popped the GPS on the top there instead of there because that's a stupid area for it. And I've taken it outside and it's captured GPS is okay. One other thing I did, this is the included battery strap, but what they didn't do, real oversight, is give you anything to put here. And you see we've got some screws here, so we'd have the battery sort of sat on the screws. I found a bit of this silicone material that I could place there, and that holds the battery in a bit nicer there. But something like a thick Velcro strap or something is another option you could do. We've also got the R9 set up. We've taken it for a quick test hover. All looks good. So yeah, next decent day we'll take it out for a flight and we'll see how it does. But that's how it looks now, just in case it crashes horribly and I can't show you this. Welcome down to the farm, where, as you can see, the conditions are ideal for flying quads, or maybe not. We've got a lot of places not to land, and it's freezing cold and foggy, as you can see, but we'll give it our go. We've got the Tyro119 here to test out, see if the GPS works, all that sort of stuff. Got a variety of batteries to go with. I thought start off with something like a 4S 1800. I've also got a couple of 6S 1050s, maybe a bit small for that one, because this goes up to 6S. And if I'm feeling really silly, I've got this great big multi-star 5.2 amp 4S battery, which seems ridiculous, but it does hover at less than 50%, so might give that a try. So we're off for the maiden flight. I said I'd wait for a decent day to try and fly, but hey, beggars can't be choosers. I just needed to get any weather window I could. Now you're probably wondering on this one, hey, where are the GPS coordinates? And normally they'd be on the bottom of the screen. I utilise the fact that Betaflight has two OSD displays because this is a private location that is owned by somebody. I keep the location private as well. So yes, normally I would have figures down the bottom of the screen there, but not this time. That said, I have got it on my radio, and I'm going to cover that when I talk about F.Port in another video. But first impressions are very good. This thing seems to fly very smoothly, and it's not particularly lacking power. It feels pretty good. It feels like a sort of regular quad here. And again, it's only a 6-inch quad, which isn't too much bigger than a 5-inch, but it seems considerably bigger when you just put it next to a normal 5-inch quad. And we're just doing a bit of a test here for speed, about 123 kilometers an hour according to the GPS, which is about 67 miles an hour, which is not too bad. One thing I am noticing about this battery, and this is the 1800 4S, it seems pretty efficient. When you're just dawdling along, it's flying at about 30% throttle, not a problem. And I'm checking out rescue mode here to see if that is all working well, and I'm happy with it, and it seems pretty good. As mentioned before, rescue mode, it doesn't do anything too clever. It doesn't come and try and land or anything. The idea is it gets back to you, and if you lost signal on your goggles, you could visually get it back, or if you lost radio signal, you could get that back. So you take it out of rescue mode and you'd land it manually. Now, I realise I haven't really talked about the setup of the GPS, and that's because I've done a separate video of it where I did some trial and error to sort of figure out what was best and stuff. But in order to get there, you have to enable expert mode and go to the Failsafe tab. Always start with your Failsafe in drop before going to GPS rescue, but these are the GPS rescue settings I've used, and these work well for me. But I'll put a link to that video in the corner so you can check it out in more detail about what these means and how you might set this up. Anyway, back to the flying. I always thought that the 129 with its 7-inch props was a bit of a cruising around quad rather than anything else, but with the 6-inch it seems like it can do either. You can cruise around. I'm quite happy to do flips and rolls with it, and it doesn't feel like you're moving something massive around the air. I think on the top end speed it suffers because it's a much sort of bigger area that you've got to push through the air, but in terms of sort of regular flying around and just doing a bit of freestyle, it seems absolutely fine to do that. A few minutes in though, and I'm starting to see some blobs on the camera. I can't feel any rain or anything coming on me, but it seems like they were definitely picking up some moisture from somewhere, and we're seeing a little bit of more crackles on the VTX because the 5.8 absolutely hates water. It's like a complete block for it, so it's on slightly dodgy ground there, and we're just using the 25 milliwatt setting to start with, but more is the problem that I can't see all that well anymore, and I'm slightly worried about is any of the electronics going to short on me.
But that said, we still get a good 5 minutes out of this 1800 battery, which it seems crazily efficient on a quad like this. I do notice that all of a sudden the GPS sats drop down here. I don't know if this is again because of water or the area or whatever, but a little bit odd. And I took a quick picture of my lens after that, and this is what it looked like for all that dampness. So, having been happy with the several tests I did of the GPS rescue mode, what I do next is I go into the Failsafe and I change from drop to GPS rescues because I'm pretty happy it's going to bring me back. And while I'm in there, I also use SmartAudio to change the power up to 200 to see how that flies. Now, I decided to go out this time using that crazy big 5200 4S battery, the Multistar. There's only a reason for this. Firstly, you can see it's still managing to hover and fly at only 30% throttle despite it being pretty heavy. But I got a good sort of 10-11 minutes when I was flying this on the 129. There's probably a better battery to use which isn't quite as big but is bigger than the one I did have, but I don't have that, so I thought I'll try this one out just to see how we get on. And in this one as well, I just wanted to take it a little bit further out because I've got the R9 system here. I wanted to check that was working okay. So the idea is here to just do a quick 1 kilometre there and back, make sure everything's basically acting nicely. On the way there, we're getting blobs on the screen, so I'm a bit concerned that the air is in fact getting too wet. You see the sea over there, and of course this stuff rolls in from the sea. Which can cause a problem. And this is not a field I'd like to go down in. Could you imagine? I don't think I'd find the quadcopter. It would just sink instantly. This is absolutely wet as you like, ploughed field. You can see there's just lakes here and there. Just awful. It is. We've had such a bad run of weather over here in the UK. I thought I was going to get away with it today because the forecaster said maybe some drizzle in the afternoon. This is in the morning. But no, I seem to have to try and fly in a cloud, and that's not working out so well for me. I'm just down here in this field, just having a little bit of a chase around of the seagulls, seeing how this quad does in terms of being able to fly with some agility, which it seems to do okay. We can sort of tail them around for a while until it gets to the fact that we can't really actually see them anymore. Well, yeah, unsurprisingly, the water droplets don't get any better with me staying out there longer, so I'm going to have to cut this one short. It's a bit difficult to tell what this is going to do because these Multistar batteries drop down voltage very quickly but then hold it there around this sort of 14 point lots volts. And again, I keep seeing rescue mode disappearing there, and I'm not trusting at all that this water isn't having an effect everywhere, so I think it's time to take this one down. However, I figure I really need to try the 6S out just to see how that goes. So I figured I've just got like one couple of minute flight left to me. And wowzers, this gets really responsive really fast. It needs about 10% throttle to get this thing going. And it at this point feels really agile. It's got so much power. You can just drop down and come out of anything in an instant. And it still flies really smoothly, which is really nice. This battery is only a 1050, which is really sort of, a 5-inch racing style battery. We got to 140 there, which is only about 86 miles an hour. So only about 10 miles an hour faster, but it's just that power. The power we've got to change from going slowly to very fast or get right up in the air really quickly is really impressive. So I think sort of a larger 6S battery might be the real sweet spot for this thing. If you're going to cruise, I think the 4S does quite well, but if you want to go really fast and do some really interesting moves, then yeah, the 6S really does makes it kick in something different. Unfortunately, as you can see, I've already got wetness on the screen. It's not going great, but there you go. I tried to do what I could in the conditions, but that's the best I could do. Well, I've got to apologise about the conditions I ended up flying this poor little thing in, but it did quite well despite some of the worst conditions I've flown in. I really wouldn't try and fly those. I've had this now since November, and I had some delays in building it. Then I was on holiday and it was Christmas, so I thought I really need to get this video out, so I wanted to fly it. And it was a real shame that I didn't do more with it. But the good news is I will be flying this some more and doing some more video on it, because I want to talk about how I put the F.Port connection in and how I'm getting GPS sats and stuff back onto my radio.
which can be quite a useful thing. But yeah, this flew very nicely. I kind of like the versatility of it. When I look at the 129, although it's only like an inch, it feels much bigger. This already feels much bigger than a 5-inch, and when you get to 7-inch, it feels positively giant. So this always felt more like a cruising around quad. You could do, like, you know, rolls and flips on it, but it felt like you were doing it on a bigger quad. This, only being a 6-inch, feels a bit more versatile. You can cruise around, but you can also treat it like a normal freestyle quad. And certainly on 6S, this felt really good. It felt really agile and light with that extra power available. I think a bigger 6S battery than I was using a 1050, maybe something bigger than that. I'm not good at 6S, I don't know it, but yeah. That said, it still flew pretty good on 4S, and you could still do stuff, you just didn't have that real top end speed or power there. It was very useful, and I have to thank the people that commented on the 129 video that you could easily access SmartAudio on that VTX just by adding an extra cable. Why they didn't include that or mention it in the first place, I don't know. So, you know, there's some good and bad bits with it. The good bit I've already mentioned. Some of the bad bits, these motor wires are still absolutely awful. Why don't they use like silicon coated wiring? It'd be so much better. I don't know why there's no instruction manual. I mean, the instruction manual was always bad, but my sort of intention was to sort of say, hey, your manual's bad, write a better one, not forget the manual altogether. Because if you've coming to it as like a new build and you've not been near these ones before, it's going to take you a little while to figure out. Perhaps they're just relying on people like me to make videos like this and say this is how I put it together. I don't know. Missing out the thing for the battery as well, which is really weird. That should be there. It should be a given, really. But the rest of it hangs together quite well. I mean, they've got the positioning of the GPS really badly wrong if they want it there. You need it here, and putting it there means you'd have to do something else to put the camera on. I did actually notice they had some sort of session mount with a little slot for the GPS they had on the site earlier, but yeah, under £100 as well, which is not bad. Anyway, this has been the build, review, flight and whatever of the Tyro119 here. And this was kindly supplied for review by Banggood, so thanks Banggood. And of course there's links down below for where you can find this on the site and check it out in a bit more detail. As I said, I'll be back with this one because I want to show you what I did to connect F.Port up and what that gives you if you're using something like an R9 controller or many other FreeSky controllers that support it as well. Anyway, hope that's been helpful. This video's been long enough, hasn't it? I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.